All right, everyone, welcome back into another props video. Going to be touching on my top prop bets here for the Sunday night showdown between the Green Bay Packers, my Green Bay Packers, and the Seattle Seahawks. Should be a fun game. Let's go on and get into it. So yes, guys, this should be a fun game. It is a pretty high game total here, 46.5, and it's a 2.5 point spread in favor of the Green Bay Packers winning. So a decently high scoring game, and we shouldn't have to be worrying about a blowout most likely. And so that should create less variance. And right now there isn't any weather that we're too worried about. Thursday night, obviously that was a big factor for first of the half. Basically none of the offenses were able to do anything. It is that time of year where there are random weather reports that will pop up and kind of change the outlook of a game. We should be good to go in this game in regards to that. And so one of my early favorite bets really in the week and still right now has been Jordan Love to get over 1.5 passing touchdowns. I like the percent likelihood that we're getting here for a PrizePicks or underdog bet where it's 51.5% likely to hit. Obviously, with this being a single game slate, it's not likely that we're going to get a plus EV bet, a 54% likelihood or better bet to hit. But that being said, this is a solid bet. And if you guys are someone that bets on traditional sportsbook sites as well, should be a solid bet there as well. And now when we look at his game log, we're going to notice that he hasn't gotten this over that much recently, and he really hasn't had like 3 touchdowns in a game in quite some time. The fact that he hasn't had like a massive game, I think is part of the reason as to why I like the over. So at the start of the season, I mentioned that Josh Jacobs coming in to the Packers offense was very much due to the fact that the Green Bay Packers were relying a little bit too much on Jordan Love in the red zone. And so we have seen Josh Jacobs really be effective in terms of getting a lot of rushing touchdowns. We saw that in the game against Detroit as well. Well, that was kind of an outlier game for Josh Jacobs, and it's just your typical regression back to the mean where Jordan Love, it's more likely that he's going to have maybe those touchdowns in this game rather than it keep being Josh Jacobs. And another part to that equation is the fact that he's getting Romeo Doubs back as well, who is a good red zone threat, who's a guy that you can toss the football up to as well. Really, over the past few games, while Doubs has been out, he's been out since week 12, they really only had Tucker Kraft as a red zone threat, and that's why Tucker Kraft had been scoring a little bit of touchdowns there as well. Sure, Christian Watson can catch a deep ball and score a touchdown. Jaden Reed can do some things, obviously, in the open field, but those two are not exactly red zone threats, and Dontavian Wicks has been a little bit hit or miss. So this, having Romeo Doubs back, to me, is also an upgrade for Jordan Love. Now, the next bet that I decently like on this slate is going to be Noah Fant to get over 2.5 receptions. Now, this is a bet that if you look on PrizePicks is a demon bet at 3.5 receptions. I'm actually okay with that over. If you guys are someone that's betting on underdog, you can get this bet at 2.5 receptions for the over. And that's because it's expected for him to hit. He's got a 55% likelihood to get this over. And if we look at the snaps recently, since he's come back from injury, 67% and 59%. So still getting around 60% of the snaps like he was seeing for a majority of the season. Now that's come down a little bit. They do like AJ Barner there in Seattle, but for the most part, Noah Fant has been pretty solid in terms of getting this over. And so I'll pull up his game log here on PrizePicks. We're going to notice 3.5 receptions. He has gotten 3 receptions in each of the last 3 games, and then going back to the Atlanta game, 4 in that game. So 4 for 4 lately in terms of getting this over of 2.5 receptions. And part of the reason as to why I like this is going to be the matchup here with Green Bay, who gives up an average of 5.9 receptions to opposing tight ends. And so you give maybe a slight increase, maybe an extra target to Noah Fant. I'd be fine with that. Now, a bet that you could do instead of that, maybe you are worried about, I don't know, just that line, that demon bet. You could just go with his over receptions targets of 4. We are going to see that he has had 4 in 4 straight games and 2 for 2 in terms of coming back from injury. Again, he is playing about 60% of the snaps. And so this bet right here is part of the reason as to why I don't mind the demon bet. Obviously, it's not likely, but again, given the matchup, given the fact that he probably will get 4 targets, we just need that extra target to be an extra reception there, or that 4 targets to be an extra reception in regards to him getting over 2.5 receptions and then thus getting over 3.5 receptions. Now, guys, another bet that I like is going to be Zach Charbonnet to get over 4.5 receptions. Now, this is not a sexy bet by any means, but you look at this matchup with the Green Bay Packers, they are a defense that does give up a lot of receptions to opposing running backs. And now we are getting a running back who's basically had his worth in the NFL via the passing game, or at least recently. He's a decent runner as well, but this game should set up well for him to have a lot of receptions. It is a game that is projected to be high scoring. The Packers give up 5.4 receptions to opposing running backs per game, which is and they also give up the 4th most receiving yards to opposing running backs as well, about 43.5. You could bet his over rushing yards there as well. That's at 29.5. I don't hate that, but I actually like the fact that we are getting, a little bit of return on this bet if it were to hit. at about 1.05x. Now, if you guys are someone that bets on more traditional sportsbook sites, you can get this bet at multiple places for a plus number. So like on DraftKings right now, plus 120 for him to get over 4.5 receptions. Now, the issue is he's only projecting at 3.63, so the line really should be set at 4. If PrizePicks gives us that line of 4 receptions, they're currently not doing that. They're either giving us it at 3.5 as a goblin bet, which is not the best, or they're giving us it as a demon bet at 5.5 receptions, which is a little bit tight. Now, I do want to call it the snaps that he had last week, 80% of the snaps last week, which is pretty huge. If we get that workload, which I do expect we will, we look at week 2 and week 3, in which Kenneth Walker were out in those games as well. We did see Zach Charbonnet have a heavy snap share. Thus, to me, that increases his likelihood of getting this over. So he had 7 receptions in the last game, guys, 59 receiving yards in that game against Arizona. We look at the earlier games as well, 5 receptions in the game against New England. Again, that was without Kenneth Walker. And then only 3 receptions in the game against Miami. Miami has been a pretty decent defense. And that was a game in which they were ahead in that game, okay? 24-3 in that game against Miami. So obviously it was a more run-heavy script in that game. With this game being projected to be close, that's part of the reason as to why I like attacking those over lines in terms of receiving yards or receptions there. And then, guys, I do think that DK Metcalf is just due for a bigger game. Now, sure, he's been citing a little bit of a back injury. That seems to be more removed now. Obviously, like 3 weeks ago is when that started to really pop up. Because of that, we have seen JSN go off, but DK Metcalf hasn't really went away. I don't mind betting on his over receptions. Again, I think he's going to have a good game. You look at the Packers DST, they're a little bit banged up as well. Jair Alexander's still out. They're going to be without 2 of their starting defensive backs, so that's pretty big. We saw what happened last week with the Packers. They were very defeatable in the passing game. And so now you get DK Metcalf 1 more week, more healthy, good to go. And it's just due for a big game. I don't mind his over receptions of 4.5 if you guys can get that. But I actually don't mind the idea of betting on him to get an anytime touchdown as well. The over is currently about 38%. This is currently available on Fliff. And again, if we pull up his game log, we're going to see recently he hasn't been scoring touchdowns. Okay? Maybe a slightly better matchup against the Packers, again, with them being banged up. But this is just kind of more betting on the game to be high scoring. And I think part of that with like not having Kenneth Walker in there, and if that game is going to be that high scoring, DK Metcalf is probably their best option in terms of scoring a touchdown. So it's me betting on him being due for a touchdown, and then the Packers defense being a little bit banged up there as well. Typically speaking, this is not a bet I would like to recommend, especially for PrizePicks or Underdog, where it's not a likely bet, but it is a demon bet, and it's a 1-game slate. We do have to somewhat force some bets based off of how the game's going to go, and that's what I'm doing here. Now, guys, it did mention that Romeo Doubs is going to be back in this game. He had been out with a concussion, okay? So he's been out a bunch of games, but I do think we are going to see more of this 4-receiver split here for the Green Bay Packers, where maybe Jaden Reed gets going. That is a concern that I have, is that Matt LaFleur has been a little bit vocal about getting Jaden Reed more involved in this offense as well. If you look at kind of his game log, he has been someone that has been struggling lately as well. So it wouldn't be surprising to see him get more of an emphasis in this game. And we have seen Christian Watson be the receiver number 1 in this offense. Well, Romeo Doubs has been out. I don't mind betting on Christian Watson to have another big game in terms of his over receiving yards. Those air yards have been there for him. I go back to that Niners game, dropped a TD there. He's been very actually consistent lately in terms of his production and air yards. And so maybe you bet on his over longest reception here of 22.5. just because those air yards are going to be there. I don't mind that, but I do think Dobbs being back could just be big for this offense. If we're betting on Jordan Love to get over 1.5 passing touchdowns, I don't mind betting on him, Romeo Doubs, to potentially score a touchdown. Now, you have to either use this on PrizePicks, which you can do, or you could do this on Underdog, where they don't allow you to pair a passing touchdown prop with a receiver touchdown prop. That's kind of a way of stacking a game, a bet specifically, and you're not getting penalized for that. It's kind of a workaround, so I don't mind that there. But while we're at it, guys, I could see Wicks actually having a decent workload in this game here, guys. So the last 2 games, which Dobbs were out, he saw 4 receptions in both of those games. Okay, not too shocking there. That was somewhat expected, but he's looked good the last 2 weeks. And he's been someone that has been annoying, okay, because he's been struggling lately. But the way I see this Green Bay Packers kind of game going is this receiver snaps are going to go back to what they were earlier on in the season, where Wicks is going to be the 4, but he could still end up seeing about 50% of the snaps. They're going to be working in Watson. Watson will probably stop seeing 90%, maybe closer to 80%. Reed is going to still see about 60 to 70% of the snaps, and Dobbs, we'll see with Dobbs, with it being his first game back, but I still expect him to be seeing around 60 to 70% of the snaps, or 75% of the snaps as well. That being said, I don't hate the idea of betting on like Wicks for a goblin bet, just to bet on maybe Dobbs being slowly more acclimated back to the offense. And again, Wicks kind of looks solid the last 2 weeks, which in the middle of the season was pretty bad. He's Packers fans have said a lot, but he does really give vibes of Devontae Adams 2.0, where you see the talent, it's clearly there. A lot of frustrating stuff early on in his career, a lot of bad drops, which is what happened with Adams, to the point where Packers fans have said, Wicks, we need you gone, which is what happened with Adams early on in his career, which is crazy to think about. And then I actually don't mind the idea of getting to Tucker Kraft for an over anytime touchdown as well. I kind of mentioned that he has been more of a touchdown machine. I would argue best tight end in the NFC North. Like Laporta and him, maybe 50-50. TJ Hawkinson, probably the best. Healthy. We haven't seen it yet, but he's looked impressive, right? And he just continues to build on that success. Obviously had a pretty fun game against Detroit last week, even with Joseph trying to injure him. I don't want to go off a tangent, but you know that Christian Watson fumble? It's kind of a dirty play. Honestly, looking back on it, it's tackle better. Tackle out the hip. I mean, come on, what are we doing? Anyways, a little bit of a rant there. But Kraft has been impressive. And if we're betting on Love to get over 1.5 passing touchdowns, I think there's a good chance that's going to be Kraft also scoring a touchdown. Whether or not that's Dobbs as well, maybe TBD there, but I don't mind betting on one of those two to score a touchdown. So if you're not doing Dobbs, maybe do Kraft for a touchdown. But that's the issue with the Packers, guys. It is a little bit more of a guessing game because their offense has a lot of weapons, whereas with Seattle, it's a little bit more cookie cutter in terms of who's going to have a good game. So another bet I don't hate, but would feel like we're forcing a little bit, would be JSN to get over 5.5 receptions. Again, with this game potentially being a higher scoring game, with the Packers DST being a little bit banged up, I don't hate the idea of betting on him to get over 5.5 receptions, but I'd rather bet on DK in this game. It just feels like more of a DK game here. All right, so with that, guys, do want to remind you guys of the promo code that's currently going on the website. Before we go ahead and get into the bets of the day, use the promo code Keep Cash and you get 20% off your first 9 to 5 month membership. Take advantage of that, guys. That'll give you access to all the tools that are available on the website. It includes access to all the fantasy golf tools, the NFL DFS tools, and all the props tools for PrizePicks and Underdog, guys. Make sure to be taking advantage of that. All right, guys, so going ahead and getting into the 9 to 5 PrizePicks bet of the day here. Got a 4-slip bet. This is currently the best EV bet on the board right now. Malik Thomas to get under his 28.5 for his fantasy score. Now, we did run pretty hot last night with the fantasy score prop bets that were on. Maybe those don't hit as much, those EV bets that we hit as much. Had 2 slips, hit as flex slips yesterday, and majority of those were fantasy score prop bets. But that's still a solid bet. Obviously, we're always going to take the best bets that we currently have. And then just kind of recapping, guys, I don't mind attaching like a Romeo Dobbs TD to this or a Tucker Kraft TD to this. Don't feel the need to do that, though. Jordan Love for over 1.5 passing touchdowns. That's why I would do that, so not terrible there. Noah Fant as well. I went with his receiving targets there. I don't mind his over receptions, though, if you guys can get that at 3.5 as a demon, but I'd rather do it at 2.5 than Zach Charm to get over 5.5 receptions. I would rather bet on that at 4.5 as a demon bet. And so if they give us that bet at 4.5, I would rather bet on that. Or if they just give us what the line should be, which is 4, I would much rather bet on that. So depending on when you guys are watching this, that line could be updated. I would rather bet on that line then. And so a slightly better slip in my eyes would actually be Zach Charm to get over 4.5 receptions. And then I did go with Wicks for over 2.5 receptions, trying to just bet on this game being a higher scoring game and that role still being there for him. I realize that is risky. We are betting on the snaps being there, which they potentially might not be. Again, that is the issue with the Green Bay Packers, is that they kind of go deep with their weapons. And so it could end up being a Jaden Reed game, which I mentioned. Matt LaFleur was kind of vocal about that, so wouldn't be shocking if that were to occur as well. If you guys just want to make this a 3-slip bet and just take off a Packers pass catcher, you could do that. And I did mention, like, if you are betting maybe on Jordan Love over 1.5 passing touchdowns, you could bet on someone to catch a touchdown here instead, because obviously on Underdog, you can't pair those two up together. But I do like Noah Fant over 2.5 receptions here, and then Zach Charm over 4.5 receptions. A little bit better of a bet there on this site. Be on the lookout, guys, for the 9 to 5 cheat sheet for Underdog to see if we are getting tackles and assist prop bets for this game. Any good ones? That being said, typically speaking, we are. That typically occurs about 3 hours before lineup lock or 2 hours before game lock there. So just be on the lookout there for that as well. All right, guys, that's going to be all for this video, guys. Make sure to give a like and subscribe to the channel. That does help out a lot. Comment your guys' favorite prop bet if you guys have one. If you feel like it's a lock, I hate using that word, but feel free to do that. That's going to be all, guys. Make sure to head on over to 9to5sports.com. Get access to the tools for just $10 a month. Thanks for watching. Good luck. And as always, let's keep cashing.